Okay. I have a question about grading for the fourth marking period. Have your school districts made decisions about that? I will tell you that our school district, we met as department chairs, and this is for the secondary level, I'm just talking. And for the fourth marking period, it's everything's going to be based on completion. And if there are 10 assignments and we deem 8 of them complete, then they'll get an 80%. So it's just simply, that's how it's going to be. There's the decision was to do no, and allowing students to, one of the like bullet points was allowing students to submit and resubmit multiple times until it is deemed complete. So the teacher can decide when it's complete based on correctness. But that's how we're going about doing it. And we made the decision to not have finals this year. So I'm just wondering what everyone else decided, if that you decided at all.
We had a meeting today about AP students. So the seniors being our primary focus, we were looking at the AP students. This is the first year that we've done AP differently. We have block scheduling, but we did our AP classes in every other day, all year round. And we decided today that with the AP students that we were going to take each up to the fifth marking period, through the fifth marking period would be 18% of their grade for each marking period. And then the last piece of that last marking period would only be 10%. And we would do a project or something, because that's most likely going to be mostly after the AP test. So we also looked at some other models of what other schools are doing as far as putting more emphasis up to when we left, and then just making it maybe, 10% of their overall year grade or block semester grade, so that students are not impacted negatively by lack of access, or a lot of our students are working or helping take care of siblings, that those variables are not going to impact whether the student is able to pass on to the next grade or not.
One of the things that we were told about our grading, today was the beginning of our fourth quarter. And students in our district sometimes have a habit of sort of coasting in the first 3 quarters and then really turning it on that last quarter. They know they need an 85 to pass for the year, so they turn it on and they pass. We broke our percentages down similar to what was said here. I think we're doing 26, 26, 26, and then this last grading period is only 18%. So a lot of the students who were waiting for that big boost at the end aren't going to be able to get it. So we're definitely going to have to deal with what do we do to get those kids through the year. But we weren't told anything at all about, completion or whatever. We're still allowed to actually grade and do things like that, although nothing was said about finals. I can't imagine anybody even thinking of doing finals.
We're also moving ahead with fourth marking period grades, which started today. This was our first day of fully moving forward with online learning. And our students without access we're also able to pick up packets of information. So actually this week was the beginning of online learning. Sorry, on Monday we started that, but we kept our Easter break intact. So we're off tomorrow through next Tuesday. And so we are starting fourth marking period, but we also allowed makeup work for the third marking period. And our grades aren't due till the 20th. So it gave some students time to finish things, make up things from the previous marking period as we get started on the next. But what we can do, and this is to our discretion, if we weight our grades within our courses for the fourth marking period only, we can take the weight off and just do a straight points And that was a concern in our math department, where tests are 75% of the grade. And it's going to be more of a challenge for that in the online format. And so, but again, every teacher gets to decide if they want to do that. And then we have not talked about finals at all. But again, just like Dorothea was saying, I don't imagine that will be something we'll be doing, but that will be yet to be seen. We haven't decided when our last day is yet, so we don't know what the end of our school year is going to be. We're still waiting for that word.
Melanie said emphasis is on first 3 quarters. As long as a student passes 4th quarter, the worst they can do is the average of the first 3. So if a student fails quarter 4, the failing grade will be used.
So I was
Oh,
just my district, we have not started grading anything for 4th marking period. And I'm thinking that we will not. Everything's going to be enrichment if and when we either the governor cancels school and we're going to have some sort of accountability, or if we come back to school. So we are not moving forward, and it's frustrating for me.
Well, it's interesting today in our discussion, our assistant principal was involved, and as we were talking about grades and we were all over the place, she said, you don't know if the governor's just going to say everybody moves up a grade, seniors graduate regardless of grades, and we have no idea what's going to come forward. So it's kind of ironic that we had quite a discussion today, and the governor or the Department of Ed could in one swipe change all of our discussions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a day by day thing what comes out. Our administration has been fantastic about communicating with us, and they've told us that their motto is over communication right now. Every morning we get an email from our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. Every afternoon, sometimes a little bit later, we get one from our individual principals. So, and then we also, our education association has been providing us updates daily from our school and from PSEA. So, every day we're waiting to hear what's the next change, what's going to happen. But, we feel very informed, and we feel part of the decision making too, which I think is really important. And the principals have very much had a presence with us. Last week they met with every department, and this week they met with department chairs. So we're kind of doing an every other week thing, so that we're keeping in touch with them and everyone can see each other and make decisions together. That has been a positive thing that's happened. One of the things, does anyone else have anything to share about grades? Cindy's asking you, Sarah, how did the transition to online go for you during your first week?
Actually, it went pretty well. So I'm in a small rural district in Northwest Pennsylvania, and about a quarter of our families don't have internet access or consistent enough access to actually do online learning exclusively. And so today was the first day that packet delivery was happening. So I'm not sure, that might have been a little chaotic in our lunch lines, but it seems to be going well so far. I've been pleasantly surprised with the amount of participation of my students. They've been anxious to get back after so many weeks, and I'm sure some of that might drop off, but I only at this point have about a little less than 10% of my kids who haven't checked in some way. And many of those are kids who would just have gotten packets today. So they didn't really have a way to check in. So that at least has been a plus. I have to say, 3 days I'm tired. I'm glad that we're keeping our spring break, but it's been okay so far. So we're working in 2-week cycles. So we'll see how how the rest of this cycle goes, and then how the next one, when it's 2 full weeks, transpires.
Thanks. I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit based on something that Melanie put in the chat, and she said she's a special education teacher, and she's working with making modifications. So I'm wondering if any of you are working as a special ed teacher or with your special education teacher, and how are you handling modifications with distance learning? Like, any tips or ideas or strategies that you can share with the rest of us?
So I co-teach my biology class with a special education teacher, and we have moved to Edgenuity is the platform that we have to be using. So one thing that we've done for our special ed students is you can bypass assignments. So we have bypassed assignments to allow the coursework to be more manageable and to kind of build in that extended time that a special ed student might need.
Mm-hmm.
We are also, just like we did in our brick and mortar, we would allow retakes with, as long as they did some remediation with us. We are continuing that and allowing multiple attempts at any test or quiz or item that's graded in order to just try to accommodate in any way we can, because some of the standard ones that we would do if we were sitting with the student are out of our hands, like the reading aloud or rephrasing, or, the other thing in Edgenuity, our class has guided note packets. So we are making sure that students can check with us to make sure they have the right answers in their guided note packet. And then we're encouraging them to use that guided note packet for any tests or quizzes that they're taking online. Just trying to figure out all the different ways we can do the modifications within the platform we have to use.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like your platform makes it a little bit easier for you to do that with the picking and choosing. That's really nice. Melanie says that their online platform is also Edgenuity.
Well, and I see what she's saying.
Yeah.
Our first 2 weeks, as far as the grading, we didn't grade the first 2 weeks we were online. So Tuesday the 14th, because we also kept our spring break, starts our first time that we have to grade. We were just told today that whatever our grade book percentages or whatever it looked like, categories, anything, before we went to online has to stay the same. Edgenuity sets categories and percentages for grades. So we have to best fit items from Edgenuity into a pre-existing grade book. So for example, in my biology class, tests might be 35%, but in Edgenuity, they might be 40%. So I had to clearly communicate out today that, okay, going forward, when you look at your grade in Edgenuity, that really isn't your grade anymore. You have to look in Sapphire and spell out, when you do this in Edgenuity, here's how it translates to our Sapphire grade. And my co-teacher and I were very particular about what we bypassed in Edgenuity, just looking at making sure it didn't make gaps in their learning for that upcoming test or quiz.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a writing assignment, maybe Edgenuity says they need to have 5 paragraphs or whatever, we maybe are only going to be looking for 2, or, doing whatever we can in that way. But I do understand Melanie's point about the bypassing, but it wasn't as big of a deal because the grade in Edgenuity isn't the grade that they are actually getting.
That makes sense. Any other ideas for working with special education students?
I have a quick question. Edgenuity, is that what the state has provided for all the districts to use if they wanted to? That's the one? Okay. And then
It is, but we already had it because we have our own cyber academy. So we moved directly to that across our 6 through 12 already.
Okay, thanks. Any other thoughts or ideas? So Lori says they're teaching new information, not enrichment. One of the things that I just put in the chat is an article, and it's from 2016, but it's Chrome extensions for struggling students and special needs. So it's a lot of text-to-speech extensions, read aloud extensions, which is helpful. A lot of our databases at school also have read aloud, and through Mac and Via, which is our ebook and audiobook platform, there's read aloud, and I imagine it's the same in most ebook, audiobook platforms. Speech to text extensions. There is one immersive reader. Is that the one right now that everyone seems to be using? I think it is. I think it's Microsoft Immersive Reader. Yeah. It is a free extension, and you can actually use it without internet connection too, but it supports literacy development. I'm just reading this here. Regardless of age or ability, Immersive Reader uses proven techniques to enhance reading comprehension, language learning, decoding for readers with dyslexia. Also have grammar tools and dictionary. This is one that I've seen a lot of people using. So it takes the piece of writing and it translates it into kind of a new document, and it spaces out the wording and makes it a little bit bigger, and then you can read, have it read to you, highlight as it's reading through. You can change the text size, increase the speed. You can do different dark mode, light mode. One of the really neat things it does, you can turn on that it highlights all the nouns purple and all the verbs brown and all the adjectives green. So it's kind of neat for that. And there's also it's available in a lot of different languages too, if you have ELL students, or so that's something you might want to look at if you haven't looked at it yet.
Did you say that was a Microsoft extension, but does it go onto Google Chrome?
Yeah.
Where would I find that?
It is if you just search Microsoft Microsoft Immersive Reader, let's see, and yeah, it says it's available for the extensions available for Chrome browsers. You take a look. I mean, there's a lot of videos on it, and it is free. And I saw it demoed the other day, so looks like a really good tool for students. Chris is saying Newsella customizes readings to Lexile level for the reader. It is a great tool. Right now, they're offering that free too. If you haven't looked into, it's www.newsela.com. They have a lot of options with that too. And Cindy's wondering, Melanie, what are you involved in to make modifications for your special needs students? So maybe what kind of suggestions are you looking for? All right. Any other suggestions for making modifications, adaptations? Okay. So the other topic, so Cindy's asking what's been useful for teachers. Are you modifying IEPs? I will tell you in our district, they are just right now taking, our school meets from 10 to 2 every day. So from 9 to 10 and then 2 to 3, they've been actually making sure that they complete all of the IEP meetings. So during those, they would be modifying them if need be. Otherwise, we're following the current IEPs that they have. Is anybody else doing anything different with IEPs? Lori says, yeah, modifying to reflect a change to digital. You kind of have to.
These new documents that came out for 504s and IEPs. They literally have the wording for COVID-19, and they are modifications that are to the IEP for SDIs, purely just for during the quarantine, which is really interesting because they're modified to the point with things that you can physically do to help each individual kid. And I didn't realize that that wasn't a global thing.
What I'm seeing in our district with special ed teachers, they're putting out fires. They're working probably harder than any of us. One of the things before we even did our FID days, put them together, was the concern with special ed and parents coming back at us and the lawsuits and not taking care of our special ed students. So there's been a very heightened communication between regular ed teachers, special ed teachers, counselors, even us as coaches, constantly getting in there and cutting the special ed student, obviously following the IEP, but cutting more slack, because if we can't meet those modifications, we have to be careful. So the hyped up communication, I think, is the big thing that we're seeing right now. Pam, I like the idea of rewriting them, but there's not the time of the day at this point. We're kind of reacting instead of being proactive at this time.
Yeah, our special ed teachers have to be working like 24/7. And they're trying to set up meetings where the teachers have office hours, whereas it should be they have office hours and we all check in. Nobody feels comfortable sitting in a one-on-one environment with a special ed student with all the liability issues like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been recommended for us that we are not one-on-one with a student in a Zoom meeting or anything like that, but having that collaboration between the special education teacher and the classroom teacher is a good idea, to have another adult in there. And I think instructional coaches and librarians have been offering that to some people, that they're willing to sit in and be another adult in that Zoom room, or in that Google Hangout, or whatever it might be. I don't know. Anne, are you seeing that in your school?
I haven't. I know that there's our gifted teachers, also the other instructional coach with Chris and I know she's mentioned she's done a couple of the instructional, gifted IEPs, but I'm not sure who's been in the room with her and exactly how she's done that. I don't know if you know anything more than that, Chris, than I do.
Yeah, I don't think Chris heard your question.
Yeah.
No, I did. I couldn't unmute because my big German Shepherd was barking hysterically. I do know that a couple of our special ed caseworkers have been using conference for their IEP meetings, but the parents are there and with the students. So they've been doing it that way, which I guess as long as the parents are there, they feel pretty comfortable.
Mm.
So Allison, I have Rachel has popped in, and I had asked her to come and speak to us. So do you have anything else you want to finish up with?
What's the topic? Because I do have one additional thing, but it could probably wait. If
Okay. Well, Rachel is our cyber guru at our school. So she has been teaching remotely, or
Okay.
organizing it, and I'll let her actually explain what format she uses, but I think she has a lot of insight into working with kids in this environment, although I think we have a unique situation in that we actually open up the schools and allow the kids to come in with her before this happened. So anyway, if you have any questions for Rachel, we'll pop them into the chat, but take it away, Rachel.
yeah, thanks for being here, Rachel.
Hi, it's nice to see you all. I just think that the most important thing is to make a connection with these kids. And there are so many of them that are unable to make a connection. And I feel like it's so important that we make sure we let them know that we're that person, like we care about them. I was working on a PowerPoint with the 5 C's, because it's connection, consistency, because that's really important that we let the kids know consistently that we're going to be there. I watched a PowerPoint this week where a teacher was not able to make her sessions that she did with the kids. And 5 times or something like that, the teacher was not available. Like, if you tell the kids you're going to be there, because they're counting on that. Because in this world where everything is so inconsistent and so unpredictable, we need to be that predictable person to them.
What are the other C's? You said connection and consistency.
I don't have my PowerPoint up because
Oh, okay. That's okay.
I'm on the wrong computer. It's on my other computer.
Okay.
My school computer and my home computer don't mesh. So I'm sorry, because
That's
I
okay.
was gonna help Colleen out tonight, but I don't have the right computer.
You said often about making that phone call, because me personally, at least some of the people here are getting really good feedback from their kids. They're seeing 80 to 90% of your kids. But I know for me, I'm seeing 20% of my students, and I don't know like how the rest of you are doing. So do you have recommendations for that sort of like reaching out, like emails, or actually picking up the phone?
Well, it's really weird because my kids are mostly virtual and they're so used to being able to walk in the hybrid lab and talk to me that that they can't do that now. So I first try to send an email out, and if they don't respond, then I use the Remind app, and if they don't respond, then I'm calling. And fortunate enough for me, I live in town where most of my students live. So if I go for a long walk, I'm bound to see at least 4 or 5 of them. And so, I'm counting that. I'm like, hey guys, how you doing? Like, you didn't answer my email, you didn't answer my phone call, but I'm here. And they're like, oh, we see you. And I'm like, yeah, because I think it's Rita Pearson that says everybody needs that, someone who believes in them. And I feel like, as for me, where I work in my district with the kids that I work with, quite often they don't have that person. And I try to be that person.
Do we have any questions from our attendees here that Rachel might be able to answer for us?
Rachel, I don't know what system we use for our virtual academy.
We use NEF, which is through Pearson. it's kind of more like a textbook that's in the computer. And so instead of the kid answering the 5 questions at the end of the chapter, it's a quiz. And so NEF, it has the teachers from the district that are supposed to be like corresponding with all the kids. But I mean, needless to say, right now they're not. So that's just how we do it.
Do you work with the same students for all 4 years?
It depends on when they start. At this point, they can start whenever they want to. So I have some kids that started in 6th and 7th grade that are now going from 8th to 9th grade and will be transitioning to high school but staying in cyber. So some kids I could have for 4 years, some kids I could have for 8 years. That being said, if I'm being honest, I'm going to tell you, I am one of the few Black teachers in our school. And so it seems like I have most of the minority students. I think I did a comparison of the whole district has 10% minority students. And in my class alone, I have 80% minority students.
And we also have a question about, like, what strategies do you use to build that relationship with students so that most of them check in with you?
And I think a lot of times I don't have to build that strategy because I have something in common with them, you know, the color of their skin. And I try to use that as kind of like a leveling point where I can say to them, hey, listen, you know, I know where you've been, I know where you came from, and I want you to succeed just like, you know, your mom or your dad or whoever. I think about a conference I had with a student, and I told him, I said, you are an African American male. And he's like, I want to drop out of school. And I'm like, do you know the statistics for African American male that drops out of school? I'm like, I want you to stay in school because I know the chances that you will be dead or in jail are so great. And I was able to reach him on that plane where his grandma, who was raising him, was saying, hey, listen to her. So I have kind of like a little caveat that a lot of the teachers in my district don't have.
So do the students in your school choose cyber, or are some of them required to go into that program?
It's really weird because some of them choose it after they know they will be with me, but a lot of them don't get that choice. A lot of them are discipline problems, and I was out with a group of teachers not too long ago before all this happened, and one of the teachers told me, like, this is the worst student you'll ever get, like, he's horrible. And he is probably the most respectful student I have ever met. He comes in my classroom, he sits down, he follows directions, and I'm thinking, who is she talking about? You know what I mean? But I feel like I command a different sense of respect than a lot of the other teachers because they know where I come from. They know who I am. And we live in a very, very small town, and one of the most well-known pastors in the town that I live in is my brother. And so they all know me. And so, you know, I'm sitting here going, do I just be me or do I be somebody else? But I can't be someone else. So I'm just me. And I'm sitting here going, listen, guys, you can't do this. This is my classroom. I respect you. You respect me. And right now we're sitting down doing work, and they sit down and do work. And I can't explain it. I can't use it for my dissertation because I can't explain it, but that's what's happening.
So are all of the students in a classroom with you, or any of them out of the school? completing the online work?
The students have a choice on whether they can come in and work in the school in my classroom or whether they work at home. And that being said, I have seats for about 48 kids right now, and 40 of them are taken on a daily basis, and most of them are minority students who say, I want to come in. And some of them need help. Some of them I make come in if you have an IEP, whether it's behavioral or learning. You have to come in so I can see, so I can progress monitor. But it's kind of like we can't really require you to come in, but a lot of them come in.
And I have another question. What does your curriculum model look like? And then the follow-up questions are, do you have students working at their own pace toward completions of goals, or do all the students have to complete certain assignments on a daily basis?
All the students really work at their own pace. Kind of. Pacing is, I'm trying to pull it up here for you guys to see. Pacing is dependent on when you start. So if you start later in the semester, then you'll have to do more to complete your assignments. So let me see if I could just pull this up.
You may have already said it, but what program do you use?
We use NEF.
NEF.
And so
what does that stand for? Sorry.
Hold on one second. Can you guys see that screen?
Yep.
And so this is the program that we use, and it's through Pearson. So this is the one on understanding decimals, and we use it for our developmental math. So mostly any kid that's in high school that has issues with their math, we kind of use this one.
Okay.
And so they have videos that the students need to watch.
And how aligned is what they do in your room with what they do in the regular classroom?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's okay. How aligned is what they do in your room? Is it aligned with what they do in the regular classroom?
It's not aligned by a time period because, hold on. Hold on one second, I'm sorry.
Sure.
It's not aligned by a time period because ours is based on pacing, but it is aligned with our standards.
Okay. I think if you hit the little red, the red piece at the top, you'll stop sharing your screen. There you go. Thanks. Thank you so much for being here. You know, most of us aren't online teachers regularly, and we've kind of been thrown into the emergency online teaching mode. So it's really great to have some insights from someone who does it every day. And what especially stood out to me is your ability to make connections with students, you know, even though they're working online, and to get that many students to actually come in to work with you is something special. I also, you know, it really stood out for me about consistency. And I was thinking about the development of lessons in our learning management systems. And for those of us who aren't using a program like Edgenuity or something, we have to be really consistent, not only in our wording, but in our, in our font, in the colors we use, in the structure, so that kids are ready, like know the template. They know what they're going to see. So thank you so much for sharing these thoughts. And I will keep hearing your words, like, I want you to succeed. And that's what we have to keep telling our students. You're getting all kinds of like kudos and claps over in the chat if you want to take a look at that. I was hoping, and I think that this is a good follow-up, to take the last 10 minutes here to talk a little bit about social emotional learning and mental health of students and faculty. This, I think, was the first week that I struggled a little bit with, the isolation and the, not my identity is in my library, in my classroom. So it's really, really hard. And I know some of our students are feeling the same thing. Even my assistant superintendent, in her message today, said that yesterday was a tough day for her, because she realized she went over to her mother's house and couldn't hug her, could only look at her through, the door. So if you have questions, if we could come up maybe with some questions or things we would like to know a little bit more about in terms of social emotional learning and how to kind of handle the mental health, the things that are going on emotionally with faculty and students. I have someone, a psychologist from my school, who's willing to come in to our meeting next time and talk to us a little bit about that, if we want that to be a focus. So I'm seeing some nods. So do you have any thoughts, so that I could give her at least some either very specific questions or at least some themes that maybe she might be able to talk to us about?
I think, Allison, my only suggestion would be, if she has some ideas on how we can kind of embed this in what we're already doing, and not separate, but as we're delivering instruction or creating a lesson, is there ways to embed some of this that's a healthy dose of that social and emotional learning, yet leads to something perhaps content wise?
Okay.
And I would like to add, like, I'm offering office hours and kids aren't showing up. And I remember the first time I joined a Zoom meeting, I was so anxious. Like, if there's some way to sort of get over that hurdle to get kids into the chat rooms where we can actually be that source for them. If there's a strategy or a hook or something.
Okay.
And I have to say that even though I do a lot of virtual learning, there are a lot of kids that won't come to a Zoom meeting with 10 other kids. So I'm sitting here doing one-on-one Zoom meetings, and then I say, okay, is there someone I can add? And then I add one more person, and then we're 3 of us on the call, and then I can add one more person. And then before you know it, that person is on the meeting. But I feel like I'm doing more now than I was doing in the classroom, when they could walk in the door and I could say, hey, and make that connection. So now if you don't answer the phone, if you don't answer the email, I'm calling your mom, and then your mom is going, call your teacher, and so then they're calling me, and I'm like, okay, like, I want to have this meeting with you because it's important that and I tell them, listen, broadcast your face for 5 seconds. I want to see you. I want to make sure you're okay. I want to make sure you are still the same person I saw 4 weeks ago. And that's like, for like ES, I was an ES teacher for 10 years. And so making that connection is above most important to me. You know what I mean? So it makes it difficult when I can't see them. But yeah, that's really, really important.
My superintendent has been sending out tips also about taking care of ourselves. So I will pull together some of those to share for next week too, because they've been really, really helpful to hear from her. So I've grabbed a whole bunch of the questions from the chat. And I have another colleague who does incorporate mindfulness into her lesson every day in like the physical school. So I can talk to her too to see if she can maybe pop in with us. She just had a baby, so we'll see. We'll see what happens with that, but she would be really helpful too. And there's another teacher in my school who put together a whole series of, let's see where it is, a whole series of professional like learning opportunities for us as teachers. And I will pull those together too. I'm like, oh, here we go. She's offering wellness sessions, and she's actually an emotional support teacher. So I may pull her into like looking at all these questions that I'm pulling together. They kind of fall in a variety of different areas, and there are different people with different expertise for these. Okay. Well, we're at 7:57. Do we have anything else? Can we put anything else on our agenda for next week? If you can bring a friend next week, that would be great. Any last words from anybody? If everyone could just quickly in the chat type in your first and last name. I was able to get most of you, but that would just be helpful for attendance. Thanks. And we lost one person who was here earlier. But I think I grabbed that name too. All right.
For some reason, all of a sudden, I can't type in it. So, but I think you know my name.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, and going forward, if any of you
Yes.
like have any suggestions beyond Allison and I, feel free to put that out there. So
yeah, please email, share with us. I look forward to this every week and to seeing all of you every week. So let's keep our numbers up and keep supporting one another. All right.
So.
Cindy gave her kisses goodbye. So thank you, everyone. And email if you have any thoughts, and we'll see you next week.
Yep. Thanks for coming.
Yep.